In today's lesson, we're going to be subtracting mixed numbers using renaming. Let's start with our lesson goal. I will rename a mixed number to help me subtract. Sometimes the fraction in the first number, like this one, is less than the fraction in the second number. You can see 1/3 is less than 2/3. In this case, the first mixed number needs to be renamed. Here's a word problem we can look at together. Bruce, Chandler, and Chase go bike riding on weekends. On one weekend, Chase rode his bike for 3 hours. Chandler rode her bike for 2 1/4 hours, and Bruce rode his bike for 1 3/4 hours. How much longer did Chandler ride her bike than Bruce? So I can see that I'm going to be looking at just Chandler and Bruce. So I really don't even need the information about Chase. Let's move on down here where it says, shade the model to show how long Chandler rode her bike. Then shade the model to show how long Bruce rode his bike. So I'm going to start. Chandler rode hers for 2 1/4. So I'm going to shade in 1 hole, 2 hole, because you can see the 2 here, and 1/4 more. And then how about Bruce? Let's see if we can find a different color here. Bruce rode his bike for 1 hole and 3/4. So 1, 2, 3/4 more. Now we can look at it and compare. It says, Chandler rode her bike blank hours longer than Bruce. Well, I can look here and I see 1/3, 2/3. So the difference is 2/3. And Chandler rode her bike 2/3 hours longer than Bruce. And here's another way we can solve this kind of problem. I have to find the difference of 5 1/8 minus 3 3/8. And you can see I have 1/8 here and 3/8 here. If I have 1, I can't take away 3. So I'm going to have to use some renaming. So here we are, starting with 5 1/8. You know that 5 can also be stated as 4 plus 1. That's what this is, plus the 1/8. So let's go on to our renaming. 4 plus, let's change that 1. Let's change that into 8s. How about 8/8 is another way of saying 1. So I have 4 plus 8/8 plus 1/8 is the same thing as 4 and 9/8. Aha, now I can subtract because 9 is greater than 3. So I have 5 1/8 renamed as 4 and 9/8. So 9/8 minus 3/8 is 6/8, and 4 whole minus 3 whole is 1 whole. So the answer is 1 6/8. And here's another way. And if your parents are watching this with you, they're probably saying right now, oh, I know another way. I bet it's this way. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to rename both mixed numbers to find the difference. So I have 3 and 4/12, and I want to subtract 1 and 6/12. And I can see right away that if I have 4/12, I can't take away 6/12. So I'm going to have to rename something. What I'm going to do is I'm going to think about this 3 as 3 12/12. Got that? So 3 12/12. 3 times 12. 12. So 3 times 12 is 36, right? But I also have the 4/12 that I started with. So 36 plus 4 is 40/12. And your parents are probably showing you this right now. Okay, now I have 1 and 6/12. Well, I want to change that 1 into 12s. And I know 1 whole is the same thing as 12/12. So that's 1 whole times the 12/12. So I'm multiplying 12 times 1. Plus, I have to add to that the 6/12 that I already had. So 12/12 plus 6/12 is 18/12. So now I have my 40/12 minus my 18/12. And we can go ahead and subtract. And you will have 22/12. And if you want to turn it back into a mixed number, you can. You know that this would also be 1 and 10/12. Okay, this time I want you to write this one down. We're going to go ahead and show you again for those of you that like to see it. This is the problem we're going to work on. The black-tailed jackrabbit and the swamp rabbit are two mammals found in the southern United States. A black-tailed jackrabbit weighs about 2 1/3 pounds. A swamp rabbit weighs about 1 2/3 pounds. How much more does the black-tailed jackrabbit weigh than the swamp rabbit? Well, we're going to be comparing the weights of these two mammals. And I have 2 1/3 minus 1 2/3. And I can see right away if I have 1/3, I can't take away 2/3, so I'm going to have to rename. So my 2 1/3 is going to have to change. I can see right here, for those of you that like to see it in a picture, I've got 1, 2, and 1/3. Now, over here, I'm going to rename it. So we know another way of saying 2 is 1 plus 1. So I have 1 whole, and I'm going to take that second 1, and I'm going to turn it into fractions. 3 1/3, which is the same thing as 1. So there's your 1 plus 1. And then I still have my original 1/3. So renamed 1 and 2 and 1/3 becomes 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4 thirds. Now it's easy to subtract. 4 minus 2 is 2/3, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So the difference between the weights of those two rabbits is 2/3 pounds. And here's that same problem, and this time we're going to work it out by changing both mixed numbers into fractions greater than 1. So we start off with 2 1/3, and we're going to rename it. Remember, if I have 2 1/3, that's like 3/3 and 3/3 and 1/3. So if I have 2 3/3 right here, that's like 3 times 2, or 6/3. And I still have to add this 1/3. I have 7/3. And now I need to subtract 1 2/3. Well, I have 1, and another way of saying that, since these are thirds, is 3/3. And I also have 2/3. So I have 1 3/3. That's like 1 times 3. And I have to add this 2/3. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5/3. And now I can subtract. 7/3 minus 5/3 is 2/3. Same answer, just a different way of solving it. Okay, remember to write this down. We're going to go back and think about our goal. And our goal was that I can rename mixed numbers to help me subtract. Here's one for you to think about. How can you rename 5 to subtract 3 1/4? 5 minus 3 1/4. Go ahead and pause the video and work this out, and then come back and we'll check. Okay, I can see that if I have nothing here, I can't take away 1/4. So I'm going to have to go back and rename that 5. So I know that 5 is also 4 plus 1. And I know when I'm talking about fractions that that 1 is the same thing as 4/4. So that's another way that I could say 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename my 5 into 4 and 4/4. And then it's easy to subtract. 4/4 minus 1/4 is 3/4. 4 minus 3 is 1. How'd you do? All right, here's one more for the road. I have 8 1/10 minus 2 9/10. I can see right away that I can't subtract 1/10 minus 9/10. I'm going to have to rename that 8. Or possibly I might want to rename both fractions. I'm going to leave it up to you. You're going to go ahead and solve it either way using either strategy that we've learned today. And if you really want to be a hot shot, you can do it both ways. But I want you to pause the video, go ahead and work it out, and then when you're done, turn it back on and we'll check our work together. Okay, one way you can do this is by thinking of that 8 as 7 plus 1 plus 1/10. And I'm going to go ahead and change this 1 into 7 plus 10/10 plus 1/10, or 7 11/10. So now I have 7 11/10 minus 2 9/10. 11/10 minus 9/10 is 2/10, and 7 minus 2 is 5. That was one way. The other way is by turning both of those mixed numbers into fractions greater than 1. So I can think of 8 and 1/10 as 8 sets of 10/10. So that is 8 sets of 10/10, or 80, 8 times 10, plus the 1/10 that I have, so that would be 81/10. And I'm going to change 2 and 9/10. I have 2 sets of 10/10, so that's 20/10, and 9/10 more, so I have 29/10. So now I'm going to go ahead and subtract 81 minus 29. I'm going to have to regroup here, and I'm going to have 2, and 7 minus 2 is 5, 52/10. And if you wanted to go ahead and turn that back into a mixed number, you know that that is the same thing as 5 and 2/10. Either way, you get the same answer. All right, champs, it's time for your check. Go ahead and complete the lesson check that goes with this video. It's 7.8, and bring your work to class tomorrow. We're going to start class by reviewing and discussing these problems.